He stared down the barrel of a shotgun to save a life and became a legend of the mountains. This is the true story of Dr. James Stevenson Brown. James Stephen Brown is one of the most remarkable stories that I've ever featured on the Appalachian Storyteller. A man of incredible courage and honor, whose extraordinary life story has nearly been lost to the hands of time. Until now. On the banks of Back Creek in Rowan County, North Carolina, James Stevenson Smith was born into a world still smoldering from the conflict that ripped America apart. The year was 1866. Just 1 year after, the war between the states had drawn its final bloody breath. Yet, the effects of the Civil War lingered for many years after the final bullet was fired. The southern states were marked by ruin. Nearly every industry had collapsed, and Confederate currency was completely worthless, leading to the closure of all the banks. Simply put, this young boy was born into a world where he would have to scratch and claw for survival. It was a place of hardship, but also of grit. And grit, the kind that clings to your boots and never lets go, would follow Steve Brown for the rest of his life.
I've been on this gospel way for many, many days. But I know it won't be long till I am gone.
Steve spent his days helping tend to the family's farm. However, his father was a progressive thinker for the time. He believed the most important thing he could ever teach his son was to dedicate his life to living for the Lord and helping others. And he also believed that education was the key to prepare his son for a prosperous life. The loving father made sure his son went to school every day, and he personally took his boy to the Back Creek Presbyterian Church every Sunday. In this way, he planted his son's feet on solid ground. And what a smart decision it turned out to be, since it became clear from an early age that Steve was highly intelligent. He read every book he could get his hands on. Books on engineering, architecture, philosophy, religion, you name it. However, he was most fascinated by the medical journals of the day. Now, those journals read like science fiction, since the medical profession was completely unregulated and was full of medical quacks, selling snake oil disguised as the latest and greatest miracle cure. But for Steve, he saw past all those get-rich-quick schemes and genuinely saw medicine as a way to help others. Now, there comes a time in each of our lives where we're presented with a sort of crossroads, where a single decision can shape our entire future. And for Steve, that moment came on a Sunday morning in 1885, when he was just 19 years old.
Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee.
The preacher that day, Reverend John Thornwell, known for his booming voice and piercing gaze, delivered a fiery sermon unlike Steve had ever heard. Now, he didn't speak of distant theology or abstract doctrine. Instead, he stepped down from the pulpit and he asked the congregation a question so simple, so direct, that it struck like a hammer on an anvil. What are you personally doing to allow others to see Christ through you? What is the purpose of your life? And what will you do with your time on this earth to glorify God Almighty? The message tugged at Steve's heart, and it touched him deeply. For the first time, he knew what his mission in life was. And with tears streaming down his face, James Stephen Brown stood from the old wooden pew in the back of that small country church as he walked towards the altar. And there, before God and man, he publicly dedicated his soul to Christ, and he made a solemn vow. And that day, he didn't just give his heart to God, he gave his hands to medicine, pledging to become a doctor and serve those who couldn't help themselves. Steve's father took a leap of faith himself that year. Though times were hard, and every acre of farmland meant survival, he sold 50 acres of his family's land to raise just enough money to send his son to Davison College. It was a sacrifice that spoke volumes, and for his part, Steve didn't waste the gift. He poured himself into his studies and graduated with honors in 1889. From there, he set his sights northward and was accepted into the prestigious Northwestern University Medical School in Chicago, a world away from the red clay streets of his upbringing. After earning his medical license, Dr. Steve Brown was offered an extraordinary opportunity to serve as the head physician at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, a spectacle that drew millions and celebrated the heights of modern achievement. During that remarkable year, he set broken bones, stitched deep wounds, delivered babies under canvas tents, and assisted in surgeries with some of the most cutting-edge equipment of the era. The fair was a living portrait of the future. Electric lights twinkled like stars, and new machines promised to change lives forever. Oh, for a young, skilled physician like Dr. Brown, there was no shortage of patients or profit, and there was little doubt his future would be full of wealth and comfort. Yet, his heart was restless. His thoughts often drifted back to the Blue Ridges and the winding creeks of North Carolina. He missed the honest faces of country folks, the stillness of a mountain morning, and the sense of purpose that had first led him down the aisle of that little church. He had healed many in Chicago, but something inside of him had yearned for home. And so, while the world rushed forward, Steve Brown quietly turned back towards the people of the mountains who needed him the most, and took all the money he had made in Chicago and he purchased 700 acres of rugged mountain property in Henderson County, North Carolina. Now, you might not realize how selfless this act was. The doctor had walked away from a lucrative career in a sprawling metropolis where he drove an imported steam-powered automobile on paved roads with every modern convenience he could have ever asked for, to instead move to one of the most isolated areas of Appalachia. Indeed, it took a special breed of man to make such a move. But for the poor mountain folks who called this place home, Dr. Brown's selflessness was about to change the entire history of Western North Carolina.
Give someone you love the gift of old-fashioned storytelling. 4 books for the young and old alike that will make your heart smile. Click the link below to order your copy of the Appalachian Storyteller today.
Now, if Dr. Brown thought he would just open a practice in the mountains and folks would come a-running, nothing could have been further from the truth. You see, by 1900, most people in Appalachia were still reluctant and spooked when it came to modern medicine. Oh, they had seen those traveling medicine shows that would roll into the area every so often. Here today and gone tomorrow con men with fake potions. Even the hills folk knew that no medical doctor would dare set up a practice where not nary one man had any money to pay for his services. That's right. Folks here still held on to the ancient remedies that had been passed down for hundreds of years. Teas, ointments, and balsam oils that were made from roots, barks, and leaves, and they could be used to treat anything from a fever to a serious disease. Many times, the treatments worked to some extent, and sometimes not. But Appalachians put all their faith in them. But for his part, Dr. Brown was well aware that the average lifespan and child mortality rate in the mountains were some of the lowest in the world. for every 2 babies born here, only 1 would live to see adolescence. So, undeterred, Dr. Brown arrived by train in 1906 and promptly set up an office in Hendersonville, where he advertised his hours as 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or as suits. But it quickly became clear that this strategy wouldn't work. Most folks still lived in rural areas and rarely traveled to town more than a couple of times a year, and that was only to sell their crops or to buy supplies. In fact, during the first 6 months, not a single person set foot in his office, and wagging tongues were sure that the good doc would up and leave any day now. However, that all changed that winter when a prominent farmer named Henry Edney's wife came down with a powerful fever, and she hadn't opened her eyes for 2 days and was covered in a cold sweat. The desperate husband had tried everything, and in years past, he simply would have sent for the legendary Dr. Polly Justice King, who was the most trusted mountain doctor to ever roam the western side of the Smokies. However, Dr. Polly had passed away of old age just 2 years prior, so Mr. Edney had no choice but to send his grandson down the mountain to fetch this new doctor. It was almost dark when the young boy ran into Dr. Brown's office. The trip to town had taken 4 hours on foot. "Grandpa sent me here to see if you would come to Point Lookout. My granny is powerful sick, and they say she might not make it through the night." The doc wasted no time. He grabbed his leather satchel and put the young boy on the back of his horse, and the two set off into the dark winter night. Up the snowy bluffs of Bradley Mountain, fording several creeks along the way, through Low Gap, before the trail disappeared altogether. And then the young boy and the doctor climbed on foot the next quarter mile, nearly straight up to the top of Point Lookout, where a dim light could be seen shining through an old log cabin window. Several dogs emerged from underneath the porch and sent out a howl, signaling the arrival of the stranger. Mr. Edney ushered the doc into the cabin, where the front room was full of neighbors who had all gathered due to the impending death of Miss Edney. Wasting no time, Dr. Brown began examining the patient. She had been vomiting uncontrollably, and there was an intense heat radiating from her right lower abdomen. The doctor had seen this before, several times back in Chicago. It was clear her appendix had ruptured, and she needed immediate surgery. "Shut the bedroom door," the doc commanded, "and don't let anyone come in here. Your wife needs an appendectomy, and there's no time to waste, sir. I'm gonna have to operate on her." The mountaineer's eyes squinted fiercely as he reached for a shotgun that was leaning against the wall. "What did you say?" he said as he brought the gun to his shoulder. "Now, Mr. Edney, you're just gonna have to trust me. Your wife isn't gonna make it through the night." The sound of both hammers could be heard clicking as the mountain man calmly replied, "You better not hurt her none." Now, folks, I need to remind you, this is a true story, and as fantastic and foreign as a home surgery may sound to us now, living in the age of modern medicine, back then, folks did what they had to do in an age long before hospitals. So it was, there in the dimly lit bedroom, under the flickering light of the fireplace, and with a 12-gauge shotgun pointed at him, Dr. James Stephen Brown performed the first ever successful appendectomy in Appalachia, and he literally saved the woman's life. In the months that followed, word of the miracle spread all over Henderson County, and soon wagons carrying sick children, men with broken bones, and pregnant women began stopping in front of Dr. Brown's office. Few of them had any money, but he never turned away anyone. And for the next 65 years, the man simply known as Doc Steve visited the sick in all sections of the mountains. He knew the way to the most remote cabin in the most isolated areas. And in the early days, he rode horseback on a mare named Dolly. And as roads developed over the coming decades, he upgraded to a horse and buggy before finally purchasing an automobile. He drove both beast and machines unmercifully up the mountain roads, driving like a madman. Folks would yell, "There comes Doc, better get out of the way," and folks dove into the bushes or in ditches to keep from getting ran over. Doc would drive as far as the car would take him before completing the last leg of each journey on foot, regardless of the hour, the race, the creed, or the wealth of the patient. Dr. Steve took them all. "Pay me if you can," he was known to say, "but if not, that's okay too. The Lord will provide." He performed many operations by a kerosene lantern or a coal oil lamp as his patient laid across a kitchen table. He delivered babies all across the Smokies with little more than a fireplace to guide his hands. No matter the hour of the night, whether it be in freezing weather with howling winds, rain, sleet, or snow, Dr. Steve could be counted on. As the decades went by, hospitals and clinics opened up in surrounding towns and cities. Yet, Dr. Brown never once left the people of Henderson County. He was the last of an old breed of country and mountain doctors. There was no place he wouldn't go to save a life or to bring one into this world. Whenever the doctor was torn between two patients, he would simply ask each one whether or not they could pay. And the one who said they couldn't was the one that Doc Steve took, and he would tell the other patient to call another doctor. Dr. Steve became the most trusted and respected man in western North Carolina. Before leaving a recovering patient's house, the doc was known to complete whatever work they were too weak to do for themselves. He was known to chop wood and plow fields. He always greeted children with hard candy and women with roses that he grew himself. For one single family, Doc Steve delivered 13 children and 41 grandchildren. During his lifetime, Doc Steve delivered a staggering 6,547 babies. The last one was 8 pounds and 8 ounces, delivered on his 92nd birthday. Dr. James Stephen Brown died the day after Christmas in 1958 at 92 years old. And today, he's buried in Hendersonville, North Carolina. He was the kind of person that we should all aspire to be. In the end, James Stephen Brown wasn't defined by the letters on the front of his name or the diplomas on his wall. Instead, he was defined by the people's lives who he touched. Those who ran out to meet his buggy in the dead of the night, and those who named their children after him, or those who still pass his stories down like heirlooms. His legacy wasn't just written in patient logs and birth certificates. It was written in the muddy ruts of mountain roads and in hand-carved baby cribs. He was simply and wholly a mountain doctor. Well, my friends, that's going to do it for this episode of the Appalachian Storyteller. Let me know what you think about the good doctor's story in the comments below. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe for more true stories from Appalachia's past.